Good evening. This is Adrenaline Radio, 1680 AM on your dial. I'm Fred Blanchard, your host of Adrenaline Motorsports. We have the good fortune to have in the studio tonight an in-studio guest, Craig Railsback of BDS Blower Drive Service. BDS Blower Drive Service has been a company that's been around for 40 years in the area of Southern California, where most of, as we know it, motorsports has started pretty much in the areas of hot rods and drag racing and circle track racing and events of that kind. But the focus this evening is to get a little bit of history from Craig, and I know that the company that I work for here in Gardena area, Arius Component Products, we have the opportunity to have been using his product line, and with great success. There was a desire somewhere along the way. Hot rodding, I guess, got you started in some of this. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, in high school, I was very interested in motors and stuff like that as a young man, and at the age 14, I bought a small block Chevrolet and built my first engine, a 327, and I couldn't drive at the time. And I befriended the auto shop teacher in school, became good friends with him, and I used to go over to his house and work on my motor.
Where did you go to school, Craig?
Whittier High School.
Whittier High School. Well, you definitely are a local boy. There's no question about that. There's no denying any of that. Yeah, that's really saying something. And so I guess that during the process of learning about motors, I guess you had an opportunity to get around to some of the shops. Why don't you talk about some of those places that you went around?
Well, actually, I became quite good friends with Keith Black himself at Keith Black Industries when I was a young man, and had free reign of his shop in the dyno room down there, and I ran a lot of motors on the dyno for BDS and development work, products we were testing and developing. And was friends with Mickey Thompson over the years, too.
Well, in starting, I'm sure that there were other blower companies around, and that was one of the things that I wanted to touch on a little bit. Ideas came from pretty much where?
As far as what ideas?
On the blowers and the drives.
On the products and what we're doing?
Sure.
Well, my whole process is always to try to do a better job than we've been doing, to improve what we're doing currently.
Yeah.
So we're always making changes to find a way to make better air with less heat.
Yeah, that has always been a problem with supercharging, but we didn't learn that initially, did we?
No. we had no rule book. There were no guidelines for this stuff in the beginning. You just threw one on there, and if it didn't blow up, you were successful.
Yeah, that was the key to success. Yeah, I remember that. I guess they started out with blowers off of trucks at the time. Did you learn how to take those apart and work on those? Or
actually, I met a gentleman that used to run a twin-engine alcohol dragster down in Pico Rivera. His name was Dwayne Lidkey.
Really?
Yeah, Lidkey was a hardcore, gruff guy, but a real good, nice friend. He took a liking to me, and I bought a blower at a swap meet. And I called him and immediately took it over to the shop. And he says, "Well, this is what you do." And he showed me how to take it all apart.
Really?
And I got it all apart. It's in boxes. And I said, "Okay, now what I do?" He says, "That's for you to figure out."
Oh, well, there's a learning curve if I've ever heard about that.
Yeah, throw you right into the coal.
Boy, I'm going to tell you put your feet to the fire, and you're going to have to do something, huh?
You got to get up and move, that's for sure.
Well, the thing that would make it even worse is if you were at a race and he made you do that. That would have been something else.
I don't think he'd have done that to me at a race, but obviously it was the only way to make me learn quickly is to throw me to the wolves.
Isn't that something else?
And Dwayne was always a good individual and a good friend over the years until he passed away.
Well, I guess you met some other interesting individuals during that time as well. Why don't you talk a little bit about those folks?
Oh, God, I met a lot of the people in the industry out here. I'm trying to think. Jay Kugel did a motor for him in EFI for his land speed record car. His 91 Pontiac Trans Am that went over 300 a number of times at Bonneville. And let's see, that would be Oh God, I can't think.
Well,
of
what I guess I was alluding to is when you first started out in the blower business. I mean, you had to learn from somebody besides the one individual. I just thought maybe you had been exposed to some other people.
Oh no! In the old days, you got thrown to the wolves. You did it by trial by fire. You put it together, and if it failed, you took it apart and fixed it, and put it back together again.
Well, when you mentioned swap meet earlier, I was just wondering, is that pretty much where everybody got started, or did you got started, or where
I don't know where most of the other people got started. It was for me a beginning because I could memorize the parts that were already made by other manufacturers, and then assemble the components that were already made into different configurations to make drive kits for any given motor.
So basically, then you formulated kits from other people's products.
Yeah, I didn't make the parts.
So you weren't manufacturing at that time.
Not at all.
You were just acquiring various related components from various other manufacturers and created kits. And how did you go to market? Where did you get started on that? Did you go to the swap meet, or did you go to the races, or how did you do that?
I think our first nationals or international showing was here in California at the LA Roadster Club.
Oh, okay, yeah, they've been around a long time. Those guys.
We did it over there at the
Fairplex.
Yeah, no, the one over there off of the 5 freeway. That was over there.
I'm trying to think of what that was called at the time.
That's the first place we had. We were actually indoors at that show.
Yeah, I remember the
Great Western Exhibit.
Great Western Exhibit. There you go. That was what it was. Yes, and I recall that being an event site that people craved to go, and there were car shows there and a variety of other things there. But now I recall that going back.
That was a lot of fun too. That was the old-fashioned days.
Well, I guess in old-fashioned days, I resemble that remark somewhere along the way.
Hey, I do too, because I remember it.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things that I wanted to hit upon, but tell me, when did you start looking for a shop, so to speak? I mean, I'm sure you decided that you wanted to get into the business and start creating things.
Well, originally I actually worked for General Motors as a line mechanic after I quit school because the industry got. I was studying electronics in college, and the industry laid off 9,500 employees out of Northrop and 6,500 from another major airport operation, and those people were on the street looking for jobs, and anybody in the electronics industry would have to leave the state to get a job. I mean, there was just so much confusion at that time period, and I actually quit school in college and took a 6-month class on automatic transmissions and differentials and went to work as a mechanic.
Wow.
No formal training in motor technology.
Oh, boy, man. You talk about getting thrown to the wolves.
Yes,
you hit
sir.
it right on the head. Sure, absolutely. Well, how did the superchargers actually come into play? What drove you to that direction after all of this?
Yeah, let's see. I think it was November of '69. We had about 4 months straight of rain. And I worked for my dad in the construction industry, building concrete buildings and block buildings and stuff like that.
What area was this in?
Santa Fe Springs, primarily.
It was primarily, again, in the local area, of course.
And
you didn't stray too far from home, did you?
No.
I could see that.
I didn't like long drives. Working, 60 miles away. I did that when I worked for GM. I actually had to drive 30 miles each way to work every morning.
Where was the plant?
Upland,
California.
Yep.
Isn't that something? Yeah, I don't know how long. There were 2 other plants. One was in Van Nuys, I guess, and the other one was in Southgate.
Oh, this was a dealership.
Oh, it was an actual dealership.
Yep.
Okay, so it was a dealership.
Yeah, I worked in dealerships.
Uh-huh.
And it was a good experience for me because it taught me to be better at taking things apart and putting them back together quickly.
Wow. Well, that is, like I said, that is definitely a hard way to earn your money, but you certainly did that.